Hi everyone, Dead Battery here, and thank you for joining me on my channel. Today's video is going to be on a Nintendo 64, and I'm gonna attempt an HDMI out mod on it. Now, this is my second attempt. The first one, I kind of panicked, I think, while I was doing it, and I failed miserably. I don't know if I even have the video for it anymore, but we're gonna attempt it again. The Nintendo 64 was released in Japan on June 23rd in 1996 and North America September 29th, 1996. But it wasn't released to Europe or Australia until March 1st of 1997. The Nintendo 64 was the successor to the Super NES, and it was actually the last one to use cartridges until the Nintendo Switch came around. And this was also the competition to Sony's PlayStation as well as Sega Saturn. And I did find the code name for it, which I think is hilarious. So Nintendo 64's code name was Project Reality. And there were some launch games with it: Super Mario 64, Pilot Wing 64, and then there was a Japan exclusive. I'm probably gonna mispronounce it, but it was called Daikyo Habu Shogi. There was also an expansion pack that came with it that changed it from 4 megabytes to 8 megabytes. The original color it was released in was a charcoal gray, and then the controller was slightly lighter colored. And depending on how you count the colors, there were 10 other colors released for it, which included the gold one. Then there were 4 Pikachu ones that were released with it. In total, there were 388 games, and there were 85 that were exclusive to Japan. The Nintendo 64 also had a region lock on it, and it just meant that if you got a game in Japan versus America, there was different notches in it. I'll explain that more later because we're also going to try to unlock the region for my Japanese Nintendo 64. So let's tear down this Nintendo 64 and let's give this HDMI out mod a try. This is a Nintendo 64 that I found, and I did buy it in the junk section. I got it for 3,300 yen. Now, this is not the color that I'm going to swap it to because the original one I tried this on was a blue one and I failed at it. So we're just going to do a case swap once we get the HDMI mod in. First thing you're going to do is flip it over, and there are 6 screws on the back. If you didn't take the expansion pack out yet, before you can take the top off, you have to get that expansion pack out. The top lifts completely off. There are no ribbons or wires connecting it, so you don't have to worry about that. This one is absolutely dusty on the inside, but thankfully, as I mentioned, I just need the motherboard from this one. There are a lot of screws for the Nintendo 64. So just make sure you remember where each of those screws go. First, I'm going to remove the screws to get this long metal plate off, and there are 10 gold looking screws, 2 black screws, and 2 more screws that have like one of those wavy washers underneath of it. Once all of those screws are out, it just kind of wiggles up out of it. You can take more screws out to take more off all at one time. I'm just doing this one piece at a time. And then there are 7 screws around the main metal plate that's covering the motherboard. And there are 2 smaller, so you will have to change the head on your screwdriver or just get another screwdriver. They're longer and they hold the metal plates down to the expansion slot. There are 4 more screws that hold it down to the rest of the shell. They surround the power and the AV out. Once those screws are removed, it will lift out of the rest of the shell. You can take it off the bottom metal plate. And then I'm just going to put this all aside because I'm not using any of this case now. The HDMI mod that I'm doing is from, I'm not too sure how to pronounce this, but Hispeedido. It's pretty simple looking depending on which way you go, but this is what it looks like. It comes with the HDMI motherboard, the ribbon that you need to solder into place, and then the HDMI connection. This is where it gets tricky. So you have to lay the ribbon down over pins 6 through 25 and you have to solder them into place. Then you need to connect the one part of the ribbon to the 5-volt. And then the second part of the ribbon you need to attach to the second leg of the chip here. First, I would suggest laying everything down and taping it in place so it doesn't move. And I did that ahead of time out of camera, and I did get my microscope out. I don't think this is something you want to do without a microscope, but that's up to you. This is where I ran into issues with the last one, and I learned some stuff in the process. So I'm hoping if you want to attempt this or you are trying this too and are having the same issue, you can learn this along with me. So the first time I tried this, I used a small tip. However, I ran into this problem where everything started to get stuck together and I couldn't figure out what happened. And I'm just showing you all so that you understand. And I ruined it and I bent a leg out of place. So I'm gonna interject here only because this is where the panic set in for me the first time I tried this. I put solder down and everything stuck together and I couldn't get it apart. And then I bent legs trying to get it corrected. And I ruined it and I ripped the ribbon and everything was broke. But I wanted to try it again. In the process of that, I did a little research and found out that a smaller tip really wasn't the answer. I wanted more heat and a larger surface area, and a larger soldering tip was a smarter move. So if you are attempting this, do some research on it and see how you feel about this. But from what I can see, a larger solder tip is the way to go even in these smaller areas. Now, don't take my advice as this say all, because I am still learning, but I don't want you to get discouraged if you get legs that get stuck together. So let's give this a go again. So I'm gonna put more flux down and I'm gonna get my larger solder iron tip on there. And I'm gonna put an ever so small amount of solder on the tip and run it across. And some of them are gonna get connected, but don't panic. Just keep going, clean your tip off, put some more flux down, run along it. The more flux, the better, because it helps everything move. And eventually, once you do this a couple times, it should all be connected properly without any of the legs touching. In the end, it should look like this. It is soldered down between pin 6 and pin 25, and they are all connected properly. Now you have to make room for the HDMI, and I didn't show this on camera, but I used my Dremel. You also have to Dremel out or file down the screw hole in the corner here so that the board can fit down perfectly. The next part is soldering this one leg off the ribbon to one of the legs on the 5-volt. And as I'm doing this, I noticed something different, but I'm gonna complete it because I wanna test it. And I don't know if anybody's gonna notice what's different right now, but I will get to that in a second. Then the second leg off the ribbon goes down to this chip and it goes to the second leg. If you decide that you don't want to solder all those legs to the ribbon, there's another alternative. And you need to know which type of board you have and where the pins are. And you need to take wires and you need to connect them to all those areas that connect to all of these areas. And in the end, it looks like this. And it looks crazy. And I feel like it would be difficult. Let me know in the comments which way you would go, if you would try to solder the ribbon down or if you would try to do all these wires. So I got downstairs and I put a game in and I turned it on and the HDMI registered, but nothing showed up on the screen. And I couldn't figure out what was going on and I was kind of disappointed. So I went back upstairs, checked all my work, everything was good, tried it again. Nothing. But as I mentioned, I noticed something different about the motherboards. So this is the motherboard that I was using and I was trying this mod on. There's a surface mount capacitor here where the examples I kept finding had 2 chips here. Now I tried looking up variations of Nintendo 64 motherboards and all I got was the one with the 2 chips on it. I'm still learning about motherboards and traces and following stuff, so I don't really know, but let me know in the comments if you know why maybe it works with one versus the other one, because honestly, I don't know, and it would definitely help others out there if they're giving this a try. So I didn't show it on camera, but I brought it back upstairs. I carefully removed the ribbon. I did not rip it. I opened another 64 from the junk section just in case. It was the one with the 2 chips on it. So I redid all my work and I put it back together. I took it downstairs and I turned it on and I got this. So as you can see, it is working. So now I have a Nintendo 64 with an HDMI out so I can play it on the big screen TV if I decide to. Now that everything is tested and working, I can go ahead and finish putting it back together. So like I always say, work in reverse. So first we're gonna put the 4 screws that are holding down the power as well as the video output. Then you can put the main metal plate back down as well as the brackets that go around the expansion pack and then the long metal piece that goes over top. Don't forget that that one bracket that goes near the expansion actually goes over top the long metal bracket. Make sure all your screws go back into the same exact spots. Remember, they are different sizes for some, different colors for other. If you get confused, iFixit has an awesome teardown. Just go on there and have a look and it will explain each of the different screws and where they go. This is also going into the original case I wanted to. I got a blue one in a junk lot I bought one time and I thought it was a pretty color, so I decided to keep it. Once all the screws are in place, the last thing I'm going to do, as mentioned earlier, there's region lock on these, but you can take that off. So all you need to do is flip over your lid and this plastic piece, remove it. There's 2 screws holding it down. And then very carefully, I tried cutting it. It's kind of thick plastic. So I took it outside so I wouldn't make a mess inside and I used my Dremel to take down these 2 little bumps here. Now you can see they're gone. Yes, it does mean that it's an opening right there, but that also means that I can play this American game now in my Japanese Nintendo 64. Put the 6 screws on the back and I did just learn what they were called. They're called gambit screws. And then I have the cover that goes to the port on the bottom, as well as the sticker that went across the expansion port. So I'm gonna put it back in place and then the cover for it. So now it's complete and it is all put back together. So in the end, it took me 3 motherboards, but I got an HDMI out for my Nintendo 64. So I know I didn't show everything on camera only because I didn't know if I was gonna mess it up and I kind of wish I would have. I'm sorry. I like trying to show you all my mess ups as well because I do them quite often. As mentioned, the 2 previous boards, including the first one that I messed up, had that surface mount capacitor on it and not the 2 chips. Once again, I don't know what the difference is, and I don't know if the modification was made for just that motherboard. Let me know in the comments if you know what the difference is, or if I was just really lucky the second time I soldered everything into place and the first one would have still worked and I was just missing something. Now, I will admit this was definitely a difficult one for me. I would not consider this easy. There wasn't a lot to do on it. It was just so tiny and you needed to be patient. So if you do decide to do this modification, please be patient, breathe, and as the back of the cover states on the Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy, don't panic. Let me know in the comments if you've done this modification before and if you went with the ribbon connection or if you went with the wires. The wire connection looks so tedious. I kind of want to try it, but at the same time, I think that I am not going to be very successful at that one. Let me know in the comments what your favorite Nintendo 64 game is, and hopefully I will be able to find it and give it a go. I'm glad it's over. I'll leave a link in the description below to the places where you can buy this mod if you want it, as well as the instructions so that you can follow along with it. Thank you for watching, and as always, if you like this video, please like and subscribe, share with your friends, and I'll see you again in 2 weeks. Bye!